Nobody called him charming. Nobody called him sweet. The shelter workers used other words: destructive, unpredictable, too much. Shadow had been returned twice in 8 months. The first family lasted 11 days. They said he wouldn't stop staring. The second family lasted 3 weeks. They said he destroyed everything he touched: tissue boxes, toilet paper, an entire stack of unopened mail on the counter. They said he was broken. What none of them understood was that Shadow had been trying to tell them something the entire time, and nobody had stopped long enough to listen. But to understand what he was really hiding, we have to go back to the beginning, back to the night he was first brought in. Back to the night a shelter volunteer found him crouched beside a dumpster on the east side of town, alone in the dark, alone in the rain. That night would change everything. He weighed just over 5 pounds when she found him. His fur was matted, his ribs visible beneath his black coat, and his wide yellow eyes were locked on something in the distance that nobody else could see. She wrapped him in her jacket and drove straight to the shelter. She noted 2 things in his intake form. 1, he was physically healthy, despite everything. 2, his eyes never stopped moving. Inside the shelter, Shadow settled, but not in the way anyone had hoped. He didn't hide, he didn't cry. He pressed himself against the bars of his kennel and watched. Every person who walked through those doors, every cartwheel, every overhead light, every shift change at the front desk, he cataloged it all with those wide, unblinking eyes. The staff called it intensity. The volunteers called it something else. They said it felt like he was waiting for something very specific, like he already knew exactly what he was looking for. He just hadn't found it yet. The first family took him home on a Friday afternoon in October, a young couple looking for a calm, quiet companion for their apartment. They lasted 11 days. On day 2, Shadow knocked an entire box of tissues off the coffee table, piece by piece. On day 5, he unrolled 2 full rolls of toilet paper across the bathroom floor. On day 9, he shredded their stack of unopened mail on the kitchen counter, envelope by envelope. They called the shelter on a Monday morning. "He's completely uncontrollable," the husband said flatly, "and he stares at us constantly. It's deeply unsettling." The shelter took him back without argument. The intake volunteer noted the return with a quiet sigh and updated his file. More times than she wanted to count, she had seen it happen. Black cats were returned more than any other color. Statistically, measurably, consistently more. Not because they behaved worse, but because people arrived already expecting them to. 3 months passed. 11 people walked past Shadow's kennel. 11 people glanced in, saw those wide gold eyes staring back from the dark, and kept walking. Some muttered something under their breath, most said nothing at all. Every single one of them kept walking, and every single morning, Shadow pressed himself against those bars and watched the door open, waiting. But what happened next, nobody saw coming. Her name was Claire. She wasn't looking for a cat. She had come in only to drop off a donation, 2 bags of dry food and an old fleece blanket she no longer needed. She handed everything to the front desk and turned to leave. And then she stopped, because at the far end of the room, a pair of gold eyes was staring directly at her. Not at the room, not at the door behind her, at her specifically. Claire walked toward the kennel slowly. Shadow didn't flinch. He pressed himself harder against the bars. She extended 2 fingers toward him. He didn't retreat. He pressed his forehead directly into her hand and held it there completely still. She stood like that for a long time. She told me later that she hadn't planned any of it, that she hadn't known what she was doing until she heard herself say the words out loud. "I'd like to take him home." You're still here and you haven't subscribed yet. That actually stings a little. Hit that button right now. Stories like this one are exactly why this channel exists. Little did she know, this was only the beginning. The ride home was quiet. Shadow sat in the carrier and watched her through the mesh door the entire way. Not frantically, not anxiously, just steadily, with those wide gold eyes, exactly the way he always had. Inside the apartment, Claire had prepared herself for chaos. She had read his intake notes. She knew about the tissue boxes, the toilet paper, the shredded mail. She cleared the counters. She moved fragile things out of reach. She waited. 12 hours passed, then 24. Shadow never touched a single thing. He walked through every room slowly, deliberately, like he was conducting a careful inspection. Then he came back to the living room, sat down in the center of the floor, and looked directly at her. Just looked. For almost 20 minutes, he sat completely still, his eyes tracking every move she made. Then, without warning, he stood up, crossed the room, and pressed one paw flat against the baseboard in the far corner. Claire thought nothing of it until the next morning at exactly 6:22 a.m. when she smelled something faint coming from that same wall. She called the building manager. They opened the access panel beside the exact corner Shadow had been pressing against. Inside, a gas line with a hairline fracture. Small, slow, the kind that builds over weeks before it becomes a crisis. The kind you don't smell until it's almost too late. The building manager went pale. Claire stood very still, and Shadow sat behind them both, watching with those wide, unblinking eyes, as if to say, "I told you, I have been trying to tell someone for a very long time." And that's when everything she thought she knew about him finally fell apart. She thought about the tissue boxes, the toilet paper, every envelope he had ever shredded in 2 different homes. None of it had been random. None of it had ever been destruction. He had been leaving trails, pointing at things that weren't right, alerting in the only way he could to things that needed attention. He hadn't been broken. He hadn't been too much. He had simply been the only one in the room who was paying attention, and nobody had stopped long enough to understand what he was saying. From that moment on, she never called him a problem again. From that moment on, she called him exactly what he had always been, the one who saw everything everyone else walked right past. Shadow is 2 years old in his forever home now. He still watches, he still catalogs every sound, every shift in temperature, every change in the room. But he does it from the couch now, tucked beside Claire, one paw resting gently on her knee, his eyes half closed in the late afternoon sun. He still has those wide gold eyes that once made 11 people keep walking. But when you know what those eyes are actually doing, when you understand what he was always searching for, they don't look unsettling anymore. They look like the most careful, most devoted eyes you have ever seen. If this story reached you today, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Some stories are too important to keep to yourself. And if you are thinking about adopting, please remember this. The ones labeled too much are often the ones paying the most attention. The ones nobody wanted are often the ones who see exactly what everyone else walks past. Be patient with them. Be steady. Be willing to look closer, because they have been watching the whole time, waiting for you to finally look back. Because sometimes the ones nobody wanted were never broken at all. They were just waiting for someone brave enough to stop and ask why. Do you think black cats are truly misunderstood? Or do you believe some animals sense things we never could? Tell me in the comments.